about was just before we get into data captures and what we should optimize and why we should optimize them, I just wanted to talk through what the different types of optimization are available in Fresh Relevance. We've recently built some really fancy features in here. Shanira, definitely going back to that sort of ongoing optimization as well, rather than that traditional A/B testing. So what we have in terms of testing and optimization is what we call our optimize center. So we'll take a look at that later. And that is where you can see all the data on all of your tests you're running, easily be able to see which content is performing the best and being able to implement your winners. So that, along with the traditional A/B testing, so either A/B testing, so 2 variants, down to as many variants as your traffic allows, really. But those 2 features are available to everyone, regardless of your package with Fresh Relevance. So if you're using data captures like we're speaking about today, any of our other web content, any email content, and triggered emails, and also now SMS content, are all available for A/B testing. Some of our new fancier features come under our new module for advanced testing and optimization. If anything that we talk about is of interest to you, we are giving out free trials so you can see how you get on with it. But I will let you know what the features are now. So in terms of that A/B testing, there's an additional bolt-on functionality there for auto ending of tests. So this allows you to pick a goal, somewhat similar to, I'm sure you're used to in sort of Google software or any of your other marketing software, when you build campaigns out. So whether that's things like increasing conversions, for data captures, collecting as many email addresses as possible is probably your goal. And then what you can do is set the test to automatically end. So this whole set and forget mentality, this works really well in that sort of design where you can run sequential tests and have them automatically implement that winner based on the goal you set. The other side of it, though, comes on to more of that continuous optimization. So we don't actually call it a test, we call it an optimization. And that is looking at our multi-arm bandit tool. Now, I know it sounds a bit weird, but it is, I promise, industry standard terminology, including the octopus icon you might see in our system, which brings me joy every day. But essentially, what a multi-arm bandit does is it allows you to get to the winners of your program more quickly, but also to continue testing it. So the way that it works, so if we talk about an A/B test, throughout the entirety of that test, we will be showing 50% of your audience, for example, one piece of content, 50% another piece of content. And that's the way that that will show until you go and either auto end your test or implement the winner manually. Now, with a multi-arm bandit, it will start off in that 50-50 direction, but it learns as you go. So, really leaning into that artificial intelligence that we have baked into our system. And it can already, even when sending out an email, it will already be seeing which one's winning and start presenting the winning piece of content straight away. It will do it incrementally though, so you'll still be exposing the not so well performing campaign, but at least it won't be 50% of the time like with a traditional A/B test. Now, what the other amazing thing about the multi-arm bandit is that it will keep testing as you go forward. So as you do go into, let's say, seasonality, you have different products that sell better in different seasons. If you put that in a multi-arm bandit, then let's say you're selling shoes, that's a really nice, easy example, and you're going to recommend some sandals or recommend some winter boots. If you put those in the multi-arm bandit, we'd see that this time of year, sandals are going to start winning hands down. I mean, it's the UK, so I shouldn't be so so bullshit with that. But generally, we would imagine that people are more interested in sandals at this point in time, so that will be winning. But as we start to get towards those winter months and people start thinking about buying boots, what we'll see is the boot content might start performing better, and our content will automatically flip over and stay current with that time. So what you end up with is you create your piece of content and our system will automatically pick the winning content based on the context of what's happening, based on basically which one is winning. Now, I know that that can be a bit of a tricky concept, took me a little while. So I'll just pause for any questions here. I don't have your faces, so maybe a bit of a hands up if you understand what the multi-arm bandit is, would be lovely. I will take that. You can come again, guys. Thank you. So then the next piece of this module, which again is a real win for us, is an increased Google Analytics integration. So if you are using GA, I imagine that we could look at implementing with other providers, the Adobe Analytics, for example. Just let us know if you're not using Google. But essentially, what this allows us to do is to start tracking events in Google Analytics. So we can start looking at the impact of what content has been shown on all sorts of various things. So actually, we're talking about data popovers today, but you start to understand, does that data popover actually feed into a conversion as well? I know it doesn't directly take you off to a product page or convince that conversion, but we can start to see that data. Another really good example is with banner content, so hero banners, typically not clicked on to receive that message, but it really does build into that journey. So by having this integration, we can start to make judgments based off what content we're showing, not just what content's being interacted with, which was historically our measurement tool. So that's a bit of a summary of all of our testing and optimization features. As I mentioned, they won't all be available on sort of that base module, but you will be able to see them in the platform, and do reach out to your account manager if you want to play with any of these. Before we do hop in, I just wanted to talk about the difference between A/B testing and multi-arm bandits, because it's a question I get asked a lot. Why would you use one over the other? Because they're both really valid testing or optimization tools, but they both have their own benefits. So A/B testing is great for short-term and static context, so less about the seasonality as we mentioned earlier, but more about sort of a fixed point in time. We're looking at having set parameters, so either a amount of time to elapse or a number of impressions before you can decide that winner. If we look at multi-arm bandit, however, it is that longer term optimization. The content will fluctuate and it's quicker to find that winner than waiting for that time or impressions. We can work it into lots of optimization programs for A/B testing. So if you want to test like we talk about today, maybe we're going to look at doing sequential optimizations, and we'll get to those in a moment. Whereas multi-arm bandit is better if you are testing raw pieces of content that will change over time. So when can you use these? So A/B testing, great for those KPI-based improvements, having those optimizations for triggered emails, for example, and testing new default content. So outside of that personalization, how can we essentially make sure that we're going to show something great for everyone? A multi-arm bandit, however, is really good with those seasonal patterns. It's great for, oh, sorry, click happy. It's great for sales periods because in email it can work so much more quickly. So if you've got a 24-hour sales period, for example, then what you'll have is that you'll send off that initial email, but you don't have time to review that after it's been sent to then say, okay, content A was better. I guess you could do a soft deployment, but when time's against you, it's really not the one. So a multi-arm bandit will be great for any time-sensitive emails in particular, and website content. Another really interesting one for the multi-arm bandit is looking at a novelty effect. So particularly if you do have high volumes of repeat traffic, so people coming back again and again, what a multi-arm bandit can do is take advantage of something new being on your website. So We have all of these great AI methods for recommending products, for example. What we tend to see is when clients flick to a new one, it creates a bit of interest, or if you flick to a new banner, something changes. So what the multi-on bandit can do is take advantage of that and flick between different designs as they become more engaging to different users. So lots of information there about when you'd use both. Obviously, we can send you some of this information afterwards. If I've not already written a blog, then I've missed a trick, and we'll get that up and running so you can see that as well. But essentially, neither is better or worse than the other. They just have very, very specific benefits to each. So I think from here, we'll hop into the platform and have a look at how you can actually set some of these up. And then we'll talk about what we can optimize. But before I hop into the system, any questions?
I actually had a quick question. I was just wondering, is the multi-arm bandit optimization available in the core package? Because that's what we have currently, and I haven't really heard about it from our account managers.
Yeah, so this is our optimization package. It's called Advanced Testing and Optimization, which will also give you those Google Analytics, events tracking, and the automatic ending.
Okay.
Plus with a lot of other data you can see, which is wicked if you're a data nerd like me.
Okay,
But I
cool.
can definitely send you some more information about that.
That'd be great. Thank you.
No problem. Fab. So let's hop into the system and I can show you how easy it is to set up an optimization in Fresh. So we're just in our demo store. So you'll see some things related to skis, for example, and being as we're talking about data captures today, I'll show you how we could optimize a data capture. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by going to a slot where I'm deploying a data capture. So a slot is essentially something that allows us to make decisions about what content to show. For example, with a data capture, we probably only want to be showing it to people who have not identified, because if we already know that G has come to our website, we've seen you before, we already know who you are. So what's the point in asking for your email address again? So if I go to content and slots, we can see if there's already one set up for us. So because popovers are only on the website, we're going to look at our website slots when my internet decides to play ball. Here we go. So into website personalization. Now, you might not have quite as much content as you see that we have set up, mostly because it is a demo environment. But what I can do is I can quickly search for a data capture in here. So I'll hop into this slot. So here we can see we have a data capture set up and we are deploying that piece of content. So if I hop in and edit this slot, what we will see when we first land in is some naming data. None of this would need to be changed. On the Use tab, hopefully this is seeming familiar to everyone. This is the code that would be put on the website or where you deploy to the site editor. But the place we want to look at is those rules. So as I mentioned, slots here are deciding what content to show based on different rules. So whilst it's not rules we're looking at, we're still making that decision of what piece of content to display. So at the moment, we're displaying this data capture to everyone. So if I want to test or optimize this data capture, I would need another piece of content to test it against. Now, we can duplicate different content, and I'll show you that in a moment. But when we've got it built out, all we need to do is click onto the Add Smart Blocks. Let's find another data capture. So we'll test with this Black Friday example. All I need to do is grab it and drag it on top of the content you want to test it against or optimize it with. So you'll see that's automatically made a random category. But if I click on this header, you'll see all those different options we spoke about. So for a split test, and this is available in your standard module, you can do a split test and decide what proportion you want each to go to. So 50-50, it will default it to, but let's say you've got some long-standing content that you're happy with, and maybe you only want to test your new content with 20% of your audience. So you could do an 80-20 split, for example. If I scroll down, we can see some of the automatic optimization features coming up. They will just be grayed out for you if you don't have the access. So you won't be able to set it up and then not use it, don't worry. So we can automatically end the test based on a date or a number of impressions. And I can just type those into the box, for example. And then we get to select our goals. So increasing identification rate is probably going to be the goal that we're looking at, particularly with data captures. Maybe if you have an issue with bounce rates, maybe you want to test which different data captures reduce your bounce rates, for example. So that could be a different goal you're interested in. We'll assume identification rate. Then all I need to do is click save, and that is automatically going to start A/B testing that content. When 1,000 impressions are reached, then we can, then it will automatically implement the winner. Whilst we're on the A/B tests, if this isn't something that you're interested in terms of the automatic ending, all you'd need to do is look at the which content is performing best. And then let's say it's the gaming data capture. All I'd need to do is drag the content that I don't want into this left-hand pane. So it's not an awful lot of work to do, but obviously coming into the platform, taking a look at the data, removing the campaign and then saving it again. It's a few more steps than clicking a button and letting it do its own thing. If I just drag a content in again, I'll just show you the multi-arm bandit. And again, you've got the same sort of options, but this time, because it's not time-based or impression-based, we're just going to pick a goal. So again, identification rate, and that's when it will automatically be picking the piece of content that's most effective for you. So that's how to set up an optimization. Any questions? Fabulous. So whilst we're still in the system, I'll just quickly show you how we can analyze and see the data on the two tests. And then we'll get stuck in and talking about how we can optimize data captures in particular. So for any of our testing, we want to go to the Optimize Center. And then here we'll see a list of all of your different tests that are being run on the campaigns that are being tested. Now, whilst we've looked at slots today, you will see that you have the same, it works exactly the same way if you want to A/B test any triggered email programs, any email content itself, any SMS triggered programs as well. It's all the same drag and drop testing functionality. So now that I can see my tests, if I click the three dots here and go into the reporting, we will see all of the different reports available to us. The results are trended as well, and in the top right you can change that data. Unfortunately, demo environment means that I can't see an awful lot, but for example, if you wanted to compare the tests on a monthly basis, or if your test has been running longer than the default time frame of a month, then you can use these drop downs up here to select different time frames. What we might want to do though is look at different types of reports. So this report here, the offsite purchase value, we can see the amount of revenue that we're attributing to each bit of content in comparison. But for some people, that might not be the be all and end all. I think I've got too many tabs open. Bear with me. But essentially what we can do is we can have a look on different metrics. So for example, you saw there, albeit briefly, that we could look at that value of the purchase, so the amount of revenue. Some of the other options we have available are the number of products purchased, so the purchase quantity. We can also look at the revenue per milli. So if maybe you're testing something that means that you're not sending the same amount of emails, for example, maybe you'll want to look at the revenue per email rather than the program itself. A good example is if you were doing a split test at an 80-20, then you might want to look at that, for example. So let's see if it'll play ball with me this time. So just going into that reporting again. And then on the top left here, this is where we can pick the different reports. So as I mentioned, value, quantity, average order value as well. That can be quite interesting. And it all depends on what your goals are, really. And this revenue per milli is the one that I would use as the source of truth within Fresh if you are sending to different quantities. Luckily, that was as much as I wanted to show you in the platform. So if we hop back out, then we can take a look at what we would want to be optimizing. So for data captures, we have a lot of different functionality available, lots of different ways of approaching it. So not all of these might be relevant, but what we've essentially done is pulled up our favorite optimizations, the one that we see clients make the most value from, and then we've categorized them into basic, intermediate, and advanced, if I remember the headers. And we do have a blog on this that we'll share with you afterwards as well, that just gives you a bit more color around various things. So to start with, we'll start with the basic optimizations. And the first one probably comes up as the first optimization for a lot of things. And that is that look and feel. So what does it look like? Is it complementing your website, but is it also standing out enough? Have you tried different CTA colors? Have you looked at different background colors, different logos, all of those different content assets, which I'm sure you've been involved with testing across the board in the past. The second thing is the timing, and this is where we get a bit more into the nitty gritty. So in Fresh Relevance, we have sort of two core timing variables for data capture. We can either have it appear after a fixed delay. So I come to the website, I spend a minute looking around, and then it pops up. The other option is for it to fire on exit intent. So as I'm going to exit a website, so if my cursor's just kind of ticking over to where those tabs or the closed screen is, then we can trigger it on that point. So they're two very stark examples for you. Generally, a fixed delay is going to capture more people than an exit intent, but they're actually both really good locations to get people to sign up, particularly with exit intent if you're concerned about sort of disrupting a user's flow, then exit intents are really good for you. But within each of those even, we can change what that fixed delay is, for example. So is it more effective to have it display it to someone after 30 seconds or after 2 minutes? Generally, a longer period of time is going to be effective for letting customers, particularly first-time visitors, which we're talking about with Popovers. It's going to give them enough time to get to know you as a brand, get to know what products you offer and what sort of your USPs are. Of course, we might miss people if they bounce from the website, however. So with a shorter time, we could find that we pop up to people before they're ready to give us any data, before they're happy that we are a brand for them. But then they might stay on site still. So figuring out that timing, again, it changes customer on customer. So we don't have a blanket answer for you, unfortunately. And that's where optimization is going to come in helpful for you. The other thing that we'd put in basic optimizations, again, it comes under sort of that content area, but we're looking at incentives. And I think we instinctively go to financial incentives as soon as you hear that word, but it really doesn't have to be. Making a customer feel like they're getting some value, albeit even intrinsic value, like exclusive news or being part of the VIP club. So it doesn't just have to be a discount, although we generally do see discounts working particularly effectively. But you could try different types of incentives as well as having a no incentive option. In terms of the how to implement these, the look and feel and the incentives are all about the content, so that layout you're using. So in our smart block builder, obviously you've got the different fields to add different colors. So you could quite easily do it like that. Or you could look at having a completely different layout, or even our services team to design you a new one. So I'm going to see if I can get the platform working. I will mention that I've probably got about 30 instances of the platform open right now, which I think is why it's screaming at me. So let's go back in here and let's look at how we could implement some of those basic optimizations. So we'd be going to content and smart blocks because we want to find your data capture form. Now, one of the beauties in Fresh Relevance and what makes it really effective and quick to A/B test is the ability to duplicate content. So if I go to data capture, before even getting to this point, what I would suggest is that you have a popover which is completely branded how you want it to be branded. You're happy with how it functions, because as soon as we duplicate it, if there are tweaks you have to make, you'll have to make it in multiple places. So let's just click on one of our templates here. So when I click on it, you'll see this button here allows you to duplicate. So by quickly duplicating that, you can give it a new name, and then we can tweak that particular variable. So in this case, we were talking about the look and feel, the timing, and the coupon. So all of our layouts change a little bit, but you'll find things roughly in the same place. So for example, on the layout tab, you can see all the options we have to change the look and feel, and also the text. So if you are doing a coupon, you could have that in the text, for example, changing the color here. For the timing, that sits under behavior, and we can see various different options here. So first we spoke about whether it is a fixed delay or on exit, and it's this little tick box that's deciding if that's the case. So at the moment, it will show an exit intent. If I untick it, it will show on a fixed delay. We also spoke about changing how long that delay is, and we can see we've got this fixed time option here. So let's say this is the block we've duplicated. We were showing it after 20 seconds on the original one. I want to test it against one that appears after 60 seconds. So all I need to do, change this variable to 60 and then publish. And then at that point, I can add it to the test with that drag and drop, just as we looked at a moment ago. So that is our basic optimizations. Looking out to the group, maybe a hands up because I can't see faces. Are any of those optimizations things you think that you'll take a look at after this session? Nice, we've got some winners. So yeah, that's definitely where I would start. But of course, there's always more. So we'll do the intermediate ones now. So our next rung, our next level optimizations. So the next one, we're looking at where and when. So where on your website are you placing it? And when do we want to show your popovers? And this is all about sort of audience targeting. So are your popovers most effective after someone has browsed a few different product pages? Or is it more effective to have them deploying on product pages themselves rather than the homepage? Generally, I'd suggest the homepage. That was probably a poor example, but we can start to get into those sorts of elements. Now, just a caveat here, this is really powerful, but to set it up, you will need to use experiences. I don't want to get too off topic during this call, so I'll send some documentation around about optimizing experiences. Um, but if this is something that you would like to look at, then feel free just to drop us a message at customer success and we can work through that with you. The next one is submission communications. So, it's great that we're picking up these different, we're picking up people's email addresses, we're getting them onto your list. But how do we make sure we're maintaining it? How do we make sure that we're picking up individuals who are actually going to stay on your list? Particularly if we are talking about things like coupons, then actually we're running the risk of people joining just to get that incentive and then dropping off. I actually saw something really scary I used Gmail and it popped up to me the other day asking whether I wanted to unsubscribe from one of the fashion retailers I follow because I've not opened their emails recently. So I'm starting to see that even sort of email clients are starting to push people towards unsubscribing with content that's not engaged with. So this one is all about making sure that not only are the data captures pulling in people the most effectively, but that they are people who are going to have a great sort of lifetime value with you. They're going to become repeat purchasers. And to do this, we can essentially assign different lists via the data captures. So when you are creating your data capture, particularly if you're using a form from your ESP, what you can do is send people to different lists, and then within your ESP, you could be trying different submission communications. So that welcome email, for example, how do you A/B test that one? How can you measure the two different groups in a longer period as well? That can work through the lists. Now, the final example on this next level, and as you might have guessed, they are a little bit more technical. But the next one is cookie expiry. So this really is for those repeat visitors who keep coming to your website but are just not giving you those details. They just are not signing up. So the way that our content works is that you can apply a cookie. Now, when let's say Will comes to your website and a popover triggers, that cookie is going to be placed on his browser. Next time he comes back to the website, before the popover issues, it's going to check whether that cookie is there and essentially not show that content if the cookie is there. So what we can do is set how often that cookie expires. So essentially, if the cookie expired on 7 days, then we would ask someone every week to join your mailing list. I think by default, our system is 90 days, which can be particularly long, I think, these days. That's a 3-month period, and particularly if someone got offered that sign up on their first visit, I'm guilty for it, just automatically dismissing stuff if it pops up immediately. We lose out on that opportunity to reconnect with them. But on the other hand, if we were doing it every day, then I imagine that people wouldn't be too happy about the amount of contact that they're getting through those cookies. So finding that sweet spot on cookie expiry is a really effective way to grow your list size because we can recontact those people sooner. Now, again, we're going to hop back into the system. There we go. So in terms of looking at the cookie expiry, we can see that is normally on this page. Okay, let me check back on that one. It might be that the layout's not there. Or it might be a custom one that I've hopped in. Sod's law when doing a live demo. But I'll show you where that is in a moment. In terms of the sort of audience targeting or the submission targeting, both of those are sort of getting quite in depth. So if they are things that are interesting you, then do let me know and I can work with you on them. The reason I can't really demonstrate it is because it's so custom client to client on how different ESPs work with lists and things like that, that I could send you on a rabbit hole quite quickly today. Let me go into this example here rather than the custom layout, and then you'll see the cookie expiry, hopefully. So again, going to that behavior tab. Oh, we've changed the name of the field. My apologies. The cookie expiry is this top one, but it's now the minimum time between it displays. So it says a bit easier what it does on the tin. So this example is showing on exit intent. So we want to do it every time they exit the website, regardless. As standard, you'll probably see a 90 in this field. But as I mentioned, if you did want to test something different, then again, duplicate your content, come in here, maybe change it, test it against 30 days, save it, and then we can drag it into that split test. So we're definitely going a bit more advanced here. Any questions before I look at the presentation again? Nope. Okay, so just a quick hands again. Any of those ideas sounding interesting? Nice. Well, it sounds like we're going to have some expert optimizers off the back of this call. So finally, we have some advanced optimizations. Now, the way we categorized these was in terms of sort of effort as well as the ROI. So actually, this form length one is a huge opportunity for optimizing, but it can be a little bit niggly, and essentially you'd have to create a new template rather than that duplicate flow we looked at. But form length is a absolutely huge one for data captures. So how many fields can you ask for? We all know it'd be lovely to know everyone's first name, last name, what products they're interested in, when their birthday is, the name of their dog. You know, we'd love to know as much data as we can. But what we tend to see is that the more data you ask for from people, the less likely they are to fill it in. The most effective sign up forms will be the ones that solely ask for email address. Now, it might be that that's fine for you and that actually you are using an ESP that allows for progressive profiling. So we can get that email address now and then you can ask for name and then for birthday throughout that sort of new customer process. However, if that's not available to you, then we might need to make some fairly cutthroat decisions in terms of what is crucial information and what is nice to have information. And I guess sort of testing and optimizing this element is essentially figuring out how much you can get away with before you get a big drop off of signups. So maybe you'd want to test just the email address versus email address and Probably just first name now. I think surnames are becoming increasingly redundant, so I'd put that on a nice to have list personally. Plus, then if there are things like birthday campaigns, that might be another thing you test would be name, email, and birthday. Looking at the data for that one's definitely going to be quite interesting because there's a few considerations in terms of what the value of that data is. So as we'd expect, email address is probably going to get the most signups versus email name and birthday. But actually, is there a lot of value for you having that birthday? Does that unlock a whole new campaign, let's say within the jewelry industry, for example? Does it unlock a whole new campaign which would be high value? So it would be worth a diminished list to be able to provide that information. So there's a little bit more to think about on some of these advanced ones, but form length is definitely something to take a look at if, particularly if you've got quite long forms and you're looking to increase your number of signups as your primary goal. The final option, and beautifully on time it seems, is that appearance style. So within our layouts, and we've got more coming because we are rebuilding some of our templates at the moment, but looking at how that placement actually works. So something being in the middle of the screen versus something scrolling in from the left versus maybe a fixed bar. So something that always sticks to the bottom or top of your screen. So there's a few different ways of actually bringing that content in. I mean, you could have it flying around the screen before it sticks if you wanted to. There's plenty of options. But that will completely depend on how your website is created. It will depend on, I guess, your audience and devices. So, you know, something that's a fixed bar could be really good if a lot of your customers are mobile first, whereas, sorry, whereas some of our data captures instead are more sort of website applicable. So these are some really good things to test. The reason that they become quite advanced is because the way that these work with your website means that we might need to get the services team involved to build you something a little more bespoke so that it works seamlessly. A lot of them might have things like custom JavaScript. However, touching wood, but I've seen the new designs for some of the new blocks, and I think we can probably bump this down to a next level optimization soon once those templates are involved. Again, in terms of ease for you to set up, if you're using a new template, you can't just duplicate. You would need to essentially build out two different forms for both of these options and test them against each other. So if we're looking at basic and next level as being things that are going to be super quick for you to do and see the reward on, these advanced ones are going to take a bit more of your time, maybe a little budget, depending on your technical abilities. And yeah, just a little bit more thought, but certainly some big wins can be gained in this category. So I'll just check, are there any questions again, Danielle, Shanira?
No, I think that's probably that's definitely further ahead for me, quite a lot of that, but it was really, really interesting just trying to get that initial kind of grasp of where to go, because these are the questions that I'm being asked right now, so that's very interesting. Thank you.
Fabulous. As I mentioned, we've got a blog as well, so there's a bit more colour on the blog and some examples, hopefully different ones to what I've given you today as well, so then you've got two different pockets of information to lean from. Shanira, any thoughts from you on this one?
No, it's all really, really interesting. I mean, we've been with Fresh for quite a while, but it's more my manager who's been kind of on keeping up to date with all of this stuff, and I'm trying to get onto it now and really understand it and learn it. So all of this stuff is kind of stuff we have been implementing, but it's good for me to kind of learn as a recap in some ways as well. So it's really interesting to know.
Amazing. Shanira, would you benefit from, we have like a self-learning resource that has a summary of different videos. Is that something that would help you?
Yeah, that actually might be really helpful to be sent over if possible. That'd be great.
Yeah, no problem. I've just noted it down. So
Could
then
you
you'll
also
have a bit more.
could you also send that to me, please?
Yep, absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's even had a bit of an update of the look and feel, so it looks like a fancy book and everything now. So, sorry, highlight of my week last week that was. So you get to be the first people to witness it. That was a very brief abrupt ending there. So yeah, that was sort of the content that I wanted to look at today. Of course, there's a lot to digest in here, lots of different ways you can go. So that blog will give you a bit more colour and just summarise it in, particularly Danielle, Shanira, if you're having conversations with other members of your team, that's a bit of an easier resource to give them than the hour-long video. But if you need any assistance or you're not quite sure where to start, then feel free to drop us a message at customer.success@freshrelevance.com. Again, we'll put the email in our follow-up. The reason that we ask you to pull that is just because you've got me, G, and Will, so the other faces on the call. So yeah, if it goes to that email address, there's 3 of us to pick it up and make sure that we get that over to you. But as always, send us over questions, and I'm really excited to see how your optimization goes.